Hello everybody! Welcome to our pop-up session of this month. And as you can see, I'm not alone. So here with me is Lutz. He is our today's host. And of course we're going to say a little bit more about his person a little later. And we also have Jens, who will be here checking the chat for all your questions, all your comments. And of course, always very important, the man behind the camera, Simon. So, as you can see, we are not in our showroom. We are not even at Probat. So we are at a local roastery, Van Gulpen, and we will just get some more infos and some more insights from you, Lutz. So please, welcome everybody. And yeah, let's give us some more input. Where are we today? What are we doing here? What are we talking about?
Hi Daniela, thanks for visiting us. We are a small specialty roastery in the small town called Emmerich, which is by coincidence the same town where the Probat headquarters are. We are a pretty old company. We are founded in 1832. We started as an importer for green coffee back then. The location in Emmerich was quite favorable to bring coffee to Germany because the Dutch were one of the first, if not the first, to bring coffees from their colonies to Europe. And the coffee was transported mainly via the River Rhine, via boats. So the location in Emmerich was pretty good to bring coffee from the Dutch to Germany. And that's how we started back then. And after a few years, the son of our founder, of one of our founders, they had two founders, he had the idea to sell the coffee roasted. So back then it was common to sell the coffee green, and the people roasted the coffee at home on the stove. Yeah, coffee was back then far from being a mass consumption product. It was only for the richer people or for special occasions, and so yeah, it was common to sell the coffee green, buy the coffee green and sell the coffee green, of course, and roast it yourself. But he had the idea, and he saw that coffee was getting cheaper and cheaper, and coffee was getting more for everybody, so that he wanted to sell the coffee roasted. And yeah, he was looking for roasting machines, and it was hard to find roasting machines to roast bigger amounts of coffee. So he and his partner teamed up with an engineer called Theodor von Gimborn, and they started a new company, or another company, to build roasting machines.
Now guess what that company's name is?
The first name was Emmericher Eisengießerei and Maschinenfabrik van Gulpen, Lenzing und von Gimborn. And the first product was a 5-kilogram ball roaster, pretty small roaster. And the first two units were bought by our company, which made us a coffee roaster in 1868. And the company that built these roasting machines, and they sold over 100,000 units of this ball roaster until 1910, I think, which is a huge amount of coffee roasters.
Yeah, exactly.
But that company with the long name was later rebranded as
Probatwerke! Yay!
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so we started roasting in 1868, and before that we were a coffee importer. And 70 years later, my grandfather then rebuilt the roastery after the Second World War, where the roastery was completely destroyed. That roaster where we're standing was bombed from the second floor of the old roastery in the city center. And he rebuilt the roastery, and a few years later, when the roastery was up and running again, he had to face the next threat, which was the dumping prices of the very big roasteries.
Yeah.
So the coffee was getting cheaper and cheaper, and a lot of roasteries died back then because they couldn't keep up with the low prices. And he decided to go the other way and to concentrate entirely on specialty coffee, which was called gourmet coffee back then. But he only went for the best coffee he could get and sold them mainly in Germany. So yeah, and that is pretty much what we do, what we still do. We try to get the best coffees, roast them, and sell them again.
Yeah, and not many people actually know that we do have a roastery in Emmerich. So all the time, of course, when they visit us, we say your name, and sometimes we also recommend to come here. So just to have a look and try to find out what does a real roastery look like, because a lot of people they just about to start their business, and then the close history that we have together, it's always something that amazes them a lot. But I'm quite sure that today you still already do some probably things more or less the same, but also do some things completely different. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you always have to evolve as a business, as a roaster, no matter what you do. So it's not possible to do exactly the same what my grandfather did or my father did. And I think it's pretty important to pass the knowledge from one generation to another.
True.
So I'm the sixth generation now in the company. But it's also important that every generation comes up with its own ideas, uses new technologies that are introduced, and yeah, of course we try to use the newest technologies. I suppose my grandfather did not roast with roast profiles, didn't have any computers,
Yeah.
so of course we use this. The quality of the green coffee has evolved a lot, and it's just a few things, so it's always important to keep up with the newest trends and to see what is possible and to move on.
Yeah, true. And as our topic today is the blending topic, you know that because we have asked the questions, how do you guys blend? Do you blend before the roasting or after the roasting? This will be, of course, something we're going to talk about a little bit more in detail now. And I'm quite sure also here there was a change in how the blends have been made, how you make your blends today, and also especially when talking about the called gourmet coffee back then, the specialty coffee today, there's things that have been changing. So you're still blending today, right?
Yes, we do. But yeah. But concerning blending, I have to say, in a perfect world, we would only have coffees that score 90 points and above, and we would have only customers that are willing to pay 40 or 50 or 90 or 100 euros per kilo. And of course, we have these coffees around 90 points, and with nice, great Kenyans, Ethiopians. Sometimes we have some competition coffees, and so on. And we have a couple of customers that are willing to buy and that are willing to pay a lot of money for it. Yeah, but we are not living in a perfect world.
Unfortunately,
if I could only make these coffees, I would do. But I think there's another market that is would still call specialty, and that is pretty important, because the producers do not only produce, even the best producers in the world do not only produce coffees that score around 90 points.
For sure.
A lot of the harvest is scoring 85 points or maybe a bit lower, and they really need to sell these coffees properly too, at a decent price. And these are still decent coffees and nice coffees.
For sure.
And I think there are a lot of people that are willing to pay a bit more than they are used to, and I think that's a task for us to, as a specialty roaster, to drag these people away from the supermarket coffees, and they are used to pay 10 euros or less for a kilo of coffee in Germany, but I think in most parts of Europe as well. And so I think we have to drag these people into specialty. And I think it may be easier to do that with coffees that cost around 25 euros per kilo, that are decent coffees, that are nice coffees. But yeah, we should have coffees that are a bit more inexpensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
I think their blending could be a good way to make these coffees even a bit better.
Yeah. Yeah, so you kind of slowly get them to use to the taste, to the profiles, and also usually when coffee people think of coffee in a traditional way, they just have, it's a dark beverage, it should keep me awake, and it should have that roasting aroma. But of course nowadays we know that coffee has so much more to offer.
Yeah.
And then also here we kind of slowly have to make them appreciate all the flavors, because if you do it just all of a sudden, that might be too much for a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe, of course, there are people that drink a great Kenyan and are blown away by it from the beginning. But I think for many people it could be maybe even to be too complex and too different to the coffee they are used to. So I think there's a huge market in between, and these coffees are important too. So that's where blending could be interesting, to make a coffee around 83 points even a bit better if you combine it with another good coffee.
Yeah. So also here we should probably just talk a little bit more about the reasons. Why do we blend? Why don't we only just sell singles? What is the reason? Why do people actually blend? Why do you blend?
So back then, I think blending for the coffee roaster was the highest art form, like knowing which coffees fit together, which how the coffee tastes, and which coffees make each other better, maybe in the blend. So of course we still have some, I would maybe call them traditional blends, which go way back to the 50s and 60s, coffees that were blended by my grandfather. And yeah, way back then it was the higher art form for a coffee roaster to blend the coffees. So it was no question to blend the coffees. There were almost no single origin coffees, different as it is now. So so yeah, back then it was the idea to make the best of the coffees, to make a more balanced coffee, a more even cup, and to combine the best of the coffees you blend.
And also probably, I think one of the reasons also nowadays why people blend is to come up with the same flavor profile all the time. Because with the blending you can probably just slightly, if there's differences in the green, which you probably could otherwise taste if using the same profile for a single, with blending you kind of could limit those differences and just make it a nice round complex cup all the time, without people probably noticing that even maybe the percentage in the blend has changed, or maybe sometimes even the coffee in the blend has changed, as long as the overall taste is more or less the same. But
although I think that is more thing for the industry or supermarket coffees. I think the customers of artisanal roasters or specialty roasters, the customers are used to change small changes in flavors, and they are forgiving concerning that. But I think the very big roasteries, they have like 10 or more coffees in the blend, and for them it's very important to keep the same quality and exactly the same flavor all year round. So for them it's of course it's important.
True. And also I think the customers of the handcrafted coffee roasting, they are not only just more forgiving, but they're also more appreciating if there's differences, because that's the reason why they come here and why they get the explanation what's inside the cup, what could I look for, what different flavors are in there. And then you just said it's probably more a topic for the bigger roasteries to make it an overall taste. Of course, here also we need to say that sometimes also, of course, the price can give you a reason why to blend coffees, especially when we look at the coffee prices now. Coffee prices are going quite up. And also here we could say, if you have a coffee in your blend, which is maybe not as high priced as the others, you could with this kind of limit your price, if this is one of your reasons when you sell your coffee. It's like what you said. It's if we would live in a perfect world, then we would not need to do all that, but unfortunately we don't. So sometimes we have to just give it a look to the price range and just try to find out what is possible with the blending. So
there are producers that would be shocked if you blend their coffees with the coffees of other producers. They're very proud of their product, of course, especially at a range where the coffee is very expensive. Of course, you don't blend them because you want to taste especially that coffee.
Yeah, this is also the reason you can see it here. We have some coffees on the table. This is the coffees being in our shop for this month, so it will be Lutz coffees there. And also here we have, of course, a great variety of flavor where we can come out and just try to find out what's in that single coffee. So thank you also for giving us the coffee in the shop so that people can appreciate the great flavors. And you already mentioned that sometimes, especially when talking about big industrial roasters, they have up to 10 or even more coffees in their blend.
That's what I heard. I don't know.
That's what I heard too. And also here, of course, I think it won't be possible to find out about the single flavors that you get from each coffee. And here we're really talking about making it an overall taste. But how many blends or how many coffees do you have in your blends? I mean, it's not going to be 10. I'm quite sure about that.
I think the most coffees we have in a blend is 4. Most with, I think there was the first specialty blend back, or gourmet blend back then. It was called Royal Dinner Mocha. That consists of, I think, 70% Ethiopian cedar coffee and 30% it was Java back then. Now it's Papua New Guinea. And then we have one blend with 3 coffees and one with 4 coffees. Yeah.
Okay. And now, of course, my big questions: is it blend before or blend after roasting?
If I make a new blend, or if I would, when I make new blends, I just made 2 blends, I think, in my life. I would always roast them before blending them, because there you really can roast them to the perfect roast degree, or individual perfect roast degree of every coffee. Of course, it's much better, and roasting them after blending is always a huge compromise concerning the roast degree. But the traditional filter blends we have are blended before roast. I think that was just a common practice back then.
Yeah.
And I couldn't change it now, because otherwise I would have 4 roasts instead of 1 roast for these coffees. And I have still a lot of very old customers, not old, but loyal customers that are our customers for maybe 20, 30, 40 years. And I still want to make these coffees for them. And we still have even young customers that like these coffees. And if I wouldn't blend them before the roast, I couldn't make them anymore, because that would be too many roasts. Yeah. That would not be economic.
Your roaster is then not probably completely filled, and you have small batches, or maybe your coffee even gets old when you wait for this coffee to be used in one of the blends if you would roast them all separately. So also this could be a reason why blending before could be done. If you say, yeah, but it's maybe only a 10% that I'm using in my blend, and even if it's probably still also reacting like one of your other ingredients that you have, you could easily put them in the blend before you roast them, instead of roast a complete batch only using 10%, and maybe then the coffee gets old. So
there's so many factors.
Yeah,
the workload is a huge factor.
Yeah.
And if you want to sell the coffee or ship the coffee as fresh as possible, if I get an order of 20 kilos for that specific blend, and my roasting machine does 20 kilo, but I have only 10% of this coffee in the blend, so this is 2 kilos. Yeah. Yeah, and it's way too low for the workload of the roaster. So
true.
I have to roast much more, and the rest of the coffee, of the specific coffee for the blend, would get way too old. So it's a huge factor. There's so many different factors you have to think about. Yeah,
and if you would use that small amount of coffee, I mean, we already had a change in aroma development, because we're going to change the amount of heat transfer with convection, heat transfer with contact. So we get probably a different aroma profile, which you probably could feel when you put it in the blend. Maybe not all of our customers, but certainly there are some that would do that. So also here, it's some sort of a compromise. You always have the fresh coffee, but for this, you kind of have to roast it together. But if we would do it in the perfect way, in the perfect world, then of course it would be better to roast them all separately, right? This is what you're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So if you make a new blend, you should better look for a blend where you don't have so small amounts of one coffee in the blend. So maybe 50-50 blends or 50-30-20. Yeah, it's a problem.
Yeah, true. And it's also, I think what also would be a problem if one of those ingredients is not available on the market anymore. Maybe because there was a bad harvest, or maybe the price is just not fitting anymore, or whatever could be the reason. And then this ingredient would need to be exchanged. And also here we need to, of course, think about how do we do it. It's also some sort of a compromise that you would need to do. And also here we have to say, okay, we need to think about that quite clearly and just find out what to do best.
Yeah, there's a huge trend in the recent years to make seasonal blends. Many roasters do that now, that they just make a blend of the coffees they have anyway, and then they have maybe the coffees as a single origin espresso or single origin filter, and then they blend it for a seasonal espresso together. But these are coffees they roast anyway, so they have, can sell them. The rest of the coffee they don't need in the blend can sell them on a different way. So
yeah, that would be the best. I mean, if you look at the roasting profiles for blends, in a lot of cases you need to have a different profile for the coffee which you're using in the blend than if you would sell it as a single.
Yeah.
And then you will need to have different profiles anyway. So it's a lot of work that you put into creating those blends. And of course the best way would be the way how you sell it as a single is also already the most perfect that you can use in your blend. But in most cases, does not really work out. Sometimes it does, and that's then perfect. I mean,
yeah, especially most blends are espresso nowadays.
Yeah,
you barely make any filter blends. So most of the time you have one coffee as a single origin filter maybe, and then you need it as well as for the espresso blend. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So if you don't make omni roast,
another topic to come.
Different topic. Yeah, you need two different profiles anyway. So
yeah. And when we talk about blends, we of course we have to talk about what could be blend. How should the coffee be actually be? How is the characteristic of this coffee? And we ask our customers, our followers, and we got a lot of reactions back. So when we have a look on picture number 5, we actually see there's just a small number of reactions which we got back. And in some of those reactions, we can already get some mentioning of, if it's different density, then of course you roast separately. If it's different size, then you roast separately. And there's more to this. So what are you looking for when you are thinking about creating blends? What is the reasons, or what is the special things that you need in a coffee bean when they go in a blend? What do you compare?
So you mean if you blend before the roast?
Yeah.
The properties.
If you would do that, yeah.
Yeah, of course, the coffee has to be pretty similar concerning the chemical properties, the physical properties. So, yeah, you mentioned density, moisture. These are the things that are very important. So you have to...
Let me just write that down so that we can kind of have an overview on this. So, of course, when blending beans, we need to have a look on the density for sure. And you mentioned moisture, so humidity. I hope my handwriting is good to see and good to read for everybody. If not, of course, we can also find it somewhere later, or we can just give it to you later. And more?
Yeah, all the properties that are important for the heat transfer and the heat absorption for the bean, of course.
Yeah.
Like
these would be already important then, density and moisture for the heat transfer.
Yeah, we can go a bit more into the detail for density and moisture maybe, because it's all about the conduction, how the heat is transferred from the surface to the center. So,
yeah.
For example, the higher the density, the better the conduction. The conduction is.
So
like
that you
the
give it
heat
to
is
the
transferred.
center.
And the same for moisture. The higher the moisture content is, because water transfers the heat better, and the higher the moisture content is, the better the heat goes into the center.
Yeah.
So it's very important that the the different roast profiles, the center and the surface of the bean have at the beginning of the roast, that the curves and the roast profiles,
how the heat is developing from on the outside of the bean compared to the center of the bean, right?
You want to have the same roast degree in the center as
exactly.
on the surface,
yeah.
so that is very important.
So that it's roasted nicely through and through.
Yeah.
And also I think one very important point is of course the size of the bean. How big are my beans? I mean, sometimes if you really think about blending before, of course, if the size is smaller but the density is maybe different, then those two characteristics, they could kind of even out. But if thinking about blending before, and this is what we also get in comments of Joshua, for example, he sent us his comments in, and he says that if he wants to blend, now I'm lost in all my papers here, I think it is number 2, and Joshua says, depends what the beans we are using. When they roast the same, then before. When they roast different, then after. And this is exactly what you said. It's like if the beans would, in theory, all have more or less the same characteristics, and the roasting curves are going quite more or less the same way, then they could probably be blended before. But as soon as you find out that your roasting profiles are different, then of course you want to roast each of the coffees to perfection.
Yeah, the problem is that most of the time the coffees with different properties are the ones that fit together. Like you want to, maybe you want to add a Brazilian coffee that has a lower density with a Colombian, high altitude Colombian coffee, or an Ethiopian coffee, which have more acidity, which bring more fruitiness maybe to a coffee, more complexity. And with a lower altitude Brazilian, you want to bring more body maybe to a blend, stuff like that. So most of the time you want to blend coffees with different properties. So that's one of the problems that you in different processings maybe. So that's where it's getting complicated, and it's not so easy to roast a low density Brazilian coffee with a high density Ethiopian coffee. Yeah,
true. One will always be kind of behind when you roast, and the other one will be done too early, and then you get maybe that over roasting flavor in your cup, which you don't want. So, and in this case, it would be better to just roast them separately, roast the coffees to perfection, and then mix them afterwards.
So maybe an Ethiopian and a Colombian, which are both grown on high altitude, would fit a bit better. So you could maybe roast them together and then add a Brazilian coffee later, or whatever you want to add. So you always have to see how much you want to compromise, and you can always, you have to roast them separately, you have to roast them together, and then you have to cup them. That's the only way.
Exactly.
Cup them as much as possible, and then you have to compare what is possible and how much do you want to compromise.
Yeah, this is actually also how we do it. We take actually very different coffees. We use a very hard bean, and we mix it in with a very soft bean, and then afterwards we make the blend 50-50 of the two. And we always put the cups on the table and we let people taste, because sometimes you just get a result which you did not expect. Maybe your cup also is quite nice, quite round, quite complex, even if they have been mixed together before you roast them. But this is not the case in all the coffee blends. And here also, even if we talk a lot in theory, and even if we know that in theory that the blending after, when we have roasted them to perfection, would be the best, maybe sometimes your cup on the table tells you different. But this is only something that you find out when you actually taste, when you cup the coffee, because otherwise you will never know. So also here, theory is one thing, but then the practical side is the other story.
Yeah, so sometimes you're surprised how good very different coffees work together in a roast. So you never know. And of course, it's nice to have the opportunity to roast the coffees very different. So we, for example, have a bit more modern espresso blend consisting of 3 coffees that are roasted to very different roast degrees. Of course, if you blend before the roast, you don't have that opportunity. You have to use one roast profile
Yeah.
for every coffee. So yeah, but sometimes you're very surprised how good very different coffees, even a low density Brazilian, work with a high density coffee.
Yeah. Yeah, we also tried it out with one coffee. We did not make a difference in color, in roast degree, but we made the difference in roasting time, and therewith already created different flavors that came out. And even if it was the same green bean being roasted so differently in terms of time, of course they gave you different flavor profiles in the cup. And by the end, when you mix them, it's still just that one green bean, so it's still a single origin, but still it's already also a blend. So this is also one of the possibilities that you could have. So also here, it's whatever suits you, whatever suits your customer, whatever is the right flavor in the cup, this could all be done. And I mean, the talk what we do here is just that there will be, at the end, I can tell you right now, there will be no right or wrong. So that there will be no conclusion. What should you do best? Because the conclusion is whatever suits your business, whatever suits your customer, whatever suits the flavor, and this is what you do. So also here, like for a lot of things in roasting, there is no right and wrong. So there's a lot of different ways of what could be done.
Yeah, of course you have to make a living, and if the customer doesn't pay you for roasting each coffee separately, you don't win anything. So you have to compromise or not.
Yeah, true. We also see on picture number 4, there is the opinion of blending before roast, because of course then it's a little bit easier to stock all your blends, and you don't have to go through each separate coffee and just weigh everything separately, because then you have already your pre-blend and you can just go ahead and weigh from this blend in your silo or in your bucket, and then just go ahead and roast. But also here it's a sort of compromise, because if you have a certain amount of coffees and you have pre-mixed them, sometimes you have a little bit more of this type of coffee in your blend, and sometimes it's a little bit more of that, because depending on how does it come out of your silo, how does it come out of your bucket.
We don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
For the 3 blends we blend before roasting, we blend them right before.
You measure everything before it comes into
right
the
before
roaster.
The roast,
that's of course, and also here we have then again that there would be like 3 different ways, because we also of course know that there is a bigger silo already filled with that pre-blend mix, and then it just gets dumped into the roaster. But also here of course we have differences, and it's just a compromise, and it has also to do with how much space do you have in your roastery, how many people do you have working, how much time and effort do you put into that. I mean, also here, if everything would work perfect, of course we all would love to do that, but sometimes it's just not possible. And if it works quite well, that could be done. But also here of course we need to understand that if you have a pre-blend mix in your silo, it could happen that it starts to demix. If there's different sizes of beans, if there's different density and weight of the beans, it could happen that I think in German it's called the Paranut effect. I have no idea if this is also the right English term. And then it just starts to demix. So also here, if you do that, don't wait too long to roast your pre-blend mix, because then otherwise it will change completely an outcome of flavor and aroma. And this is the most important what we look for in our cup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cool. We already talked about why is it so important, because it's the heat transfer that's depending on all those insights, characteristics of our beans. Of course, the nice thing about blending is that you can just mix together different flavors, different aromas, and it's not just like that single beautiful rose that you get, but it's like a bouquet of flowers. And here we have a bouquet of just flavor, of aroma that just fills your mouth, your mind, whatever there is, with all the different things. And of course, also the singles could be quite nice, but sometimes it's just that little bit more that you get.
Yeah, and I think even the customers who appreciate the high-end specialty coffees have days where they just need a good, decent cup of coffee, or maybe the family comes over and they don't really appreciate
because they don't know
the 92-point Kenyan coffee, and it's way too much. And for these occasions, maybe the normal but good and decent coffee.
Yeah, true. When we have a look around, of course, we have to also talk about how do you blend. I mean, physically, is it I mean, there's ways of what do? You just put it in a bucket, you mix it, or you put it in the roaster, your roaster is mixing it for you, right?
If you blend before the roast, of course, yeah.
Yeah. And if you blend after roasting, everything is just taken out separately from the bins. How do you mix?
In the cooling tray of the roast.
Yeah. That would be one way. This is also something a lot of our customers do. They mix in the cooling tray. The other option, which we always recommend, by the time you have a roaster, you also have a mixer, because what you could do, but this is also depending on how is your workflow at the company. If you keep the roaster turned off, no heat, you could of course also mix in the drum, because here it goes much faster and the mixing is a little bit better. So yeah, that would be one thing. And of course we also heard that there is people using completely different things, using for example a concrete mixer where they put the things and the ingredients inside and just start mixing. So there's a lot of different ways how you can come up with your blend, with your mix.
Yeah, we've been to Johan and Nyström in Oslo, and they had big drums for blending the coffee.
Oh, only for the blending?
Yeah, only for the blending.
Yeah. Oh, they got it customized as well?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you even see that there's when you enter a roastery, you see that there's a cooling tray without roaster. And in the beginning, you might wonder, well, what's that for? Yeah. And then you think, oh yeah, that's for blending for sure. So it's
like
it's just
Röstbar.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, cool. Just turning a little around, just seeing how we are doing on comments in the chat.
It's quite quiet today.
Quite quiet today.
So far, no questions. Just one comment that he prefers roasting, blending after roasting.
Yeah.
Nothing more so far. But
okay.
If you do have questions, just put them in the chat, and I'll forward them to Lutz and Daniela.
Yeah.
It's a very unpopular topic to blend before the roast. Nobody wants to say if it's.
I suppose nobody wants to say, yes, I sometimes do blending before roasting, because it makes economically wise sense.
The specialty community is very, or has been very black and white in the recent years. So
yeah,
they only know supermarket coffee and the high-end specialty coffees, and nobody wants to talk about coffees in between. That I think are very important, and maybe where I think blending comes into.
Where you could already have a good coffee, even if it's a blend. If you do it right, and even if it's done before, it could be a very nice cup. And just if there's no comments in the chat so far, I would go ahead, and we have a comment that we got before. It will be picture number 3 from Groove Coffee Roasters, and they write, our espresso uses 2 beans that are very similar in size and moisture content. Oh, there we go. And we found that when roasting them separately, the profiles we eventually decide on were actually only about 15 seconds and 1.5 degrees Celsius in difference. Roasting them pre-blended and blending in the middle of those profiles gave us better extractions. So also here we see that it's really something you will need to try out, and as we said before, if the profiles are so close,
why would you do?
It would be so much probably extra work that you would just need to put in and roast everything separately. But then of course, if you find out that your roasting profile is just very different in time, very different in end temperature, probably also depending on the size, on the moisture or density of the bean, maybe you also have a different starting temperature for your single beans, then for sure it does not make sense to roast them together. Then you really need to roast them separately and blend them after roasting. So also here, different things suit different people, different flavor profiles, and whatever suits the flavor, suits the customer, could actually be done.
Yeah, I found I think quite old quote from Stephen Layton from Husky.
Yeah, let's hear it.
But I think it's more than 10 years old. I don't know if he would say that again. Where he was talking about aroma exchange between the beans to get a more even cup if you blend before the roast. I'm not sure if you still the same opinion, but yeah, that was what he was talking about 10 or 12 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, we also get that sometimes that that people say that if you do blend before you roast, the coffees actually influence each other while being in the drum, which could be on one hand probably nice because it makes it more round, more complex, and on the other hand people think that the influence is too strong and it kind of changes the nice flavors coming from a single coffee. But here I have to say, while we roast, we form so much pressure inside our coffee bean, it nearly does not take anything in. It most of the times just gives things to the outside.
Doesn't make much sense.
So
I think it's kind of esoteric to.
Yeah, probably. So that would not be a reason for us to probably not blend before. So also here, if you have the idea that they influence each other and that could be bad, they don't really do that because it's just the behavior of what happens when we're roasting. So this could be easily said, no worries, if you think that your profiles are more or less the same, just put your beans together, roast them together, that would be possible.
Maybe we could complete the list.
The list,
a bit
yeah.
I think porosity is a big thing.
Okay, yeah.
Like what the cell walls, how the cell walls.
Porosity, CT?
With I guess.
I have no idea, so please forgive me if it's wrong.
Looks good.
Yeah. And
the shape, if we talk about pearl beans, maybe.
Yeah, true. Yeah. So this is all the things which you need to take care of when you want to make comparisons, and if you probably want to blend your coffees before you roast them. Yeah, true. Also here, as I said before, this is at least what I found out. If you have beans that are having one characteristic more differently than the other one, it could be that they kind of even out. Harder bean and a bean with more moisture and a bean with less moisture. So sometimes they could be brought together as they kind of roast more or less the same. But also here, you have to try. I mean, this is what it all comes to at the end. You have to try and find out, maybe with putting on your table, firstly all the singles, and then mix before and mix after roasting, and just find out which one suits your flavor profile best. Yeah, true.
Exactly.
And also, you are the real roaster. We are just manufacturers. But I mean, it's a different if you really have to produce, and if your day is roasting, and you have to really come up with a certain amount of coffee, instead of just doing it like we do in training, where we can, in theory, just do everything, but sometimes the things which you would theoretically do just take so much effort, so much time, that you probably, in real life, you cannot do it. But
I would recommend to do it anyway, even if you don't want to do it, because you can, I think, learn a lot about your coffees if you blend them before the roast, blend them after the roast, just to make a blend to learn something about your coffees, just for fun maybe.
And then you find out that there's, I mean, sometimes there's also people that would like to say, I never blend because all my singles, they are so amazing just standing alone, which for sure is true, because they all have their own flavors and characteristics you're looking for. But then also here, sometimes they are surprised when they do blend them, that the blend even probably is even richer in what comes out of it.
Yeah,
and,
why not?
and so also here we have to say, be careful what you say. Don't say you will never blend, because maybe you find out that your blend will be also really nice and very, very good for your customers to enjoy. And it's for me it's always like an addition to the range of coffees. And out of let's say 4 or 5 different greens, you can come up with so many ideas of blends, just not in terms of what ingredient do I put in, but also how much of which ingredient do I put in. And then with your 4 or 5 different greens, you can play around and you can come up to so many different blends and flavors that you get. So also here, the range is
It's
tremendous.
all about the diversity in coffee and the complexity of different flavors. And maybe after the trend of anaerobic fermentation, the next trend will be blending again, who knows?
Yeah.
I suppose I do have a question regarding the next trend. Blending coffee with non-coffee things, like corn or something else.
Okay.
Would this change the aroma? I don't know. I suppose.
Of course, everything that you blend in, everything that you change will change the aroma. I do remember that was quite common after the years of the World War, because coffee was quite rare and also quite expensive. So they put in maybe not corn, but
I only know the German word.
yeah, cichoria, chicory.
Yeah, I don't know what it is.
And I mean, this could also be roasted, and when it's roasted, it turns brownish. But also here, it's like with everything that you change in coffee roasting, it changes, of course, the outcome in aroma and flavor. And yeah, especially with the specialty coffees, you probably don't want to blend in anything else.
There are roasters who mix artificial flavors.
Oh yeah, true. And they spray it. And
Yes.
Yeah.
So, but this is a completely different topic.
yeah, exactly.
There's another question from Peter Wolf. Just looking. So his approach would be, so he's asking whether it would be possible if you do a blend, a pre-roasting blend, to which, for example, consists of 4 components, and 2 of them are soft and the other 2 are hard density beans. Could it be an option to roast the soft ones and the hard ones together and then blend them afterwards?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You have just 2 and 2, and you roast the 2 that are similar in roasting profile together, and then mix
Just
them afterwards.
the guys from Groove
Coffee. Yeah.
Because this would save time.
It
So-
just depends on which profiles you want to use for the coffees. If you use the same profile anyway, you can roast it together. So why
Yeah.
not?
And then we have a, I suppose, pretty special question from Marco. Why some espresso blends are quite easy to brew and others are more picky? Whether this could be a result of different densities of the components, possibly roasted together, which then afterwards result in a different portion of fines when you grind the coffee?
Could be. I mean, if you roast the different density coffees together, and even if using, please correct me if I'm wrong, even if you're using the same degree of grinding, you probably you get a different porosity at the end. You get a different way of how you get the soluble solids out of your grounds at the end, and this could be already a reason why the espresso is behaving so differently.
Yeah. So the soft coffees would have a completely different roasting degree than compared to the hard ones.
True, and therefore they have a different breaking behavior.
And you have more fines of the softer ones.
Different solubility. So if you, especially for Robusta, if you use Robusta, and if you roast a blend with Robusta, so you blend before roasting, the Robusta is very under roasted.
True.
So hence it's less soluble.
Yeah.
And then you have under extraction maybe. So that coffee could be quite picky.
Yeah, that would be an extreme case of blending different sizes, maybe different density, different moisture content, because usually Robusta is quite different in moisture content. And also here, we do that in training class just to show what it looks like at the end. The cool thing is Robusta develops from the outside more or less the same in color than the Arabica, which is in the blend. So you kind of get the idea, it looks the same, but then when you have the same roasting degree for the Robusta separately and you grind it, you see it's just so light. And also here in your blend, it might end up to give you that under roasted flavor, and it brings you acidity, not necessarily coming from the taste of the green beans, but from being under roasted. So also
the hollow.
Yeah.
Under extraction flavor.
True. And in this special case, when you roast Robusta and when you blend Robusta, this would be a coffee where you should always rethink your roasting profile if this is possible. But also here, give it a try. Just roast it and try it out. And of course, the thing is, if you roast your coffees separately and you roast them when they're pre-blend, what you need to do is, for sure, you need to watch out for your roasting profile, for your roasting degree, and for your time. If you roast those singles completely different than the pre-mixed blend, and then of course you get a different flavor, but it's not necessarily coming because the one has been blended after roasting and the other one blended before roasting, but it's coming just because you have different outcome in terms of time or roasting degree, and then you get a different flavor. So
Yeah.
if you want to compare this, just try to keep it in more or less the same range of time and color, and then you can make the explanation, oh yeah, the one blend before is better than the one blend after. It's probably more round, more complex, more whatever. But yeah, if comparing things, you should make sure that you don't compare apple and pears, but
True.
sticking to the coffee. Yeah. Well, just looking around.
No further questions
Still
so far?
pretty quiet in our chat, but you have been great in sending us your opinions before. There had been a lot of reaction coming in. Most of them, I have to admit, is in Lutz's opinion, blend after it's roasted. So roast it all to perfection and then blend the perfect coffees together. I showed you some of them, of course, as also we say it's also possible to blend before and then roast. But of course here it has to be the right profile. It has to be the right coffees. It has to be more or less probably the same roasting profile. But also here, if you find out that you have coffees that would behave completely different and they're still great when you pre-blend them and when you roast them together, just go with it. There's nobody that can tell you it's not right, as we don't have right or wrong when it comes to coffee roasting. Living in your perfect world, we would roast everything separately and then blend it afterwards. But yeah, that would be amazing. So we could give each coffee just the right outcome in terms of flavor and aroma. Yeah. Is this actually a blend or is it a single?
It's a single. It's a micro lot from Colombia.
Okay. Yeah. Very nice. Well, Lutz, thank you that we could be here, that we could be your guest, that we could have a look inside, and of course have the nice topic of blending going on. And I think there is just so many different ideas, so we could discuss that forever. But at a certain point, we of course have to come to an end. And as I said before, that there is no right and wrong. So whatever you want to do, you go ahead and do when you have the time and when your business is done for this. And yeah, everybody can try it out themselves. So go ahead, people, and if you want to. And we see you all back next time. Of course, then not with Lutz, unfortunately. Maybe it's going to be me alone. We'll see. On December 2nd, and our topic will be Omni Roast. So if you get the feeling that you want to talk about that as well, you're more than welcome to do so. Our chat will be going on a little bit longer, so if there's questions, just send them in. We're going to answer them later. And yeah, thank you for joining us, for tuning in today, and see you all next time. Thank you, Lutz.
Thank you, Daniela.